Thank you very much for being the lead sponsor of the North America Assembly, but also being with us here today. You just had a fantastic discussion based on private equity. What's your main takeaway?
I think the thing that surprised me most is this transition from looking to make an investment and then exiting at some point within a defined window. And I heard that the private equity group is willing to hold these investments for the longer term, looking for free cash flow with no definitive exit, as long as it's driving the returns that they need in their portfolio. So that was a real epiphany for me. I think there's been a real transition in how that group is thinking about their investment, particularly in portfolio companies that they currently hold.
Okay, very interesting. And where do you see innovation in the industry over the next 3-5 years?
I see it on two fronts. First is around finance. I think on the financial front, we're going to see much more creative ways of getting capital into the hands of the efficient operators on both the E&P side as well as the oil field services side. I can see vehicles such as mezzanine financing with different types of terms that can potentially convert to equity, a number of things where they're willing to trade near-term cash for equity from a financial point of view, because they know that they would be acquiring assets at the bottom of the cycle at good value. So I think that's the innovation I'd see on the finance front. On the technology front, I believe there's going to be a lot of focus on how do we enable artificial intelligence and machine learning with fundamental engineering principles. I believe that traditionally folks in our industry come from technical and science-oriented backgrounds. They want to know how the basic physics and principles drive and relate to the numbers and insight that come out of these analytical engines. And the firms that are able to make those connections and use them will have a winning formula, because it can be understood, invested in, and deployed by the operators, the companies, and the investment community.
Okay. And as we talk about innovation, everyone mentions energy transition. So as part of that, trend, how do you see energy transition, and how do you feel you'll be preparing for it?
I think the energy transition is going to be a phased situation. Every time I look at it, I kind of come back to the physical engineering principles, and you say, well, what is it that really drives oil and gas in its mobility? Moving things around, and if you consider the energy density, so BTUs per pound or watts per kilogram, that's really important in the overall equation. And right now, nothing yet compares to what we see in oil and gas, particularly in gasoline and diesel fuels, which are driven by crude oil. You've got that dynamic that's just the physical reality of things. You overlay that with what's going on in trends amongst where people want to live. They want to be closer to their work, which means there's going to be less mobility. There's less desire to continue to use the source of fuel that emits, carbon dioxide, considering climate change. So I think that overlay is coming into it. So how do you make that move from diesel fuel and gasoline into other forms of mobility driven by electricity or driven by, well, fundamentally it's electricity, but what backs up that electricity, be it LNG, be it natural gas resources? That transition is going to happen and take some time. So I think we'll phase into it over a period of, it's a 20-year transition. It's not a next week thing unless there's a breakthrough in technology. Given that, I think if I'm an energy executive, I want to understand the real physics and principles, not only in my own space, which is traditionally crude oil, natural gas, LNG, but also what are the underlying physics and energy calculations in these competing technologies, and how might those scenarios unfold. And I think it's really important to think about that dynamic and forecast what you think technology acceleration and trends are, and then take early investments in those technologies so you understand them, and then are able to transition into the winning technology, which we don't know right now what it will be, but it will likely come from 5 or 6 or 7 different alternatives.
Okay. You mentioned a few things there. Technology is one, changing the financial structures. Where do you see the major opportunity of next year, the next sort of 3 years for the oil and gas sector?
I think it's going to be in driving core operating efficiency and being ruthless, completely ruthless and honest with themselves about redesigning the business model. And redesigning the business model is, how do I deploy effectively what exists and works right now with regard to information technology, artificial intelligence. I think there's a need to really rethink our system support and infrastructure, particularly in exploration production. We have different applications and packages around the major operating disciplines, be it from finance and accounting, reservoir engineering, geophysical, geology, land operations. All of those systems are cobbled together in a way that doesn't allow clarity on what the source of truth is or efficient and quick decision making. So I think you need to improve that, couple that with better deployment and technology, then work to drive those core operating efficiencies in the drilling function, the completion function, in the back office, and from there you'll generate higher cash margins on your capital investment. Those that get there first will win, and they will consolidate the industry given the state that we're in with low commodity prices here in the near to medium term.